People always say country life is peaceful. They talk about the quiet nights, the fresh air, how you can sleep with your windows open and wake up to birds instead of sirens. I used to believe that too, until I realized peace can hide the worst kind of noise. My name's Margaret, and I've lived in this same house for over 30 years. Raised my kids here, buried my husband here too, under the old oak tree out back. I sit by him every evening, talk to him a little, tell him how quiet it's gotten around here. It used to comfort me, but lately that same silence feels heavier, like it's holding its breath. A few months ago, new neighbors moved in next door. A young couple with a little boy. The husband, Jacob, was a big man, always had that tired, hardened look. His wife, Erin, was always brought vegetables from her garden or asked if I needed help with groceries. And their boy, Eli, was sweet at first. Quiet, polite, always waved when he saw me. He had this messy brown hair and those curious eyes kids get when they see the world, as one big secret to explore. I liked having them around. Reminded me of when my own kids were young. But after a while, I started noticing things. Small, strange things. It began one late September night. I remember it clearly because the air smelled like rain, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of chamomile, listening to the crickets when I heard it scraping, a steady, rough scrape of metal against dirt. At first I thought maybe it was an animal, maybe a raccoon digging for worms. But when I leaned forward, I saw a movement near my fence line. There was Eli, crouched down, digging in my yard, not playing, digging. I called out to him, "Eli, honey, what are you doing out here this late?" He froze for a second, then turned his head slowly toward me. His face looked pale in the dim light. He didn't say a word, just stared. And then he smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile a kid gives when they're caught. It was small, tight, like he was holding something inside. I told him to go home. He stood, brushed dirt from his hands, and walked off without a sound. The next morning, I went out there. The spot he'd been digging was still fresh. A hole about 2 feet deep, 3 across. It didn't look like a child's game. There was something deliberate about it. I filled it in myself and figured that was the end of it. But that night, the scraping came back. Every night after that, I'd hear it again. Always around the same time, always near the fence, sometimes faint. I'd look outside, and there he was, the same small figure bent over the dirt. Sometimes he'd hum or whisper to himself. Once, I swear I heard him say, "Almost done." I tried to ignore it at first, told myself maybe he was just playing some strange game, but it kept happening. I started locking my gate. Even installed one of those motion lights by the porch. Didn't help. He always found a way in. One morning, I walked over to their house. Erin answered the door, looking exhausted. I told her everything. She looked mortified, said she'd talked to him, that he'd been having a rough time lately. When I asked what she meant, she just shook her head and said, "It's complicated." Then Jacob came to the door behind her. He just stood there, big and silent, staring at me. I told him his son needed to stay out of my yard. He didn't apologize, didn't even blink, just said, "Don't worry about it, ma'am. Boys get into trouble sometimes." The way he said it made me uneasy, like he wasn't talking about normal trouble. A few nights later, I woke up around 2 a.m. the scraping again. I looked out the window. He wasn't by the fence this time. He was closer, almost under the oak tree where my husband's buried. I felt my chest tighten. I grabbed my flashlight, pulled on my robe, and stormed out there barefoot. When the beam hit him, he didn't even flinch. His hands were covered in dirt, nails cracked and bleeding. I shouted, "What are you doing?" He looked up at me, breathing heavy, and said quietly, "He told me to." My stomach dropped. "Who told you to, honey?" He turned his head toward the oak tree and said, "The man who's buried here." I froze. The night felt like it stopped moving. "Eli, go home." "Now," I said. He hesitated, then ran off without another word. The next morning, I filled in that hole myself. My hands shook the whole time. Later, I went to talk to Erin again. She cried when I told her what he'd said. "He's just confused," she said. "He doesn't mean any harm." But when I looked past her, Jacob was sitting at the table, staring at me again. His eyes didn't move. He just said, "You should leave it alone." For about a week, it was quiet again. Then one night, I heard something else. Not scraping, crying. A soft, muffled sob coming from outside. I looked out my window. The hole was back, bigger this time. The dirt piled high on both sides. I squinted through the dark, and my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't Eli out there. It was someone taller, broader. I recognized that shape, Jacob. I called the sheriff right then. Told him my neighbor was digging something in my yard in the middle of the night. By the time they arrived, the yard was empty. The hole filled in perfectly, like it had never been touched. The sheriff gave me that look people give old women when they think you're losing it. Told me maybe I saw shadows, but I knew what I saw. The next morning, there was something sitting on the edge of my porch, a toy truck covered in dirt. Eli's eye picked it up, turned it over in my hand, and my stomach twisted when I saw something scratched into the side with what looked like a nail, 3 letters, Dad. After that, their windows stayed shut, curtains drawn all day. Erin stopped visiting. The boy wasn't outside anymore. Jacob's truck never moved. The whole place looked dead. Until one night, I woke up to the sound of digging again. Louder this time, closer. It wasn't coming from the yard. It was coming from under my window. I crept out of bed, grabbed my phone and flashlight, and peeked outside. There was no one there, but I could see fresh dirt piled under the window frame. My light caught a small handprint in the mud. I stepped back, locked the window, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. A week later, the sheriff came by again, said the family had moved, left in the middle of the night. No forwarding address, no notice, just gone. I should have been relieved. But I couldn't stop thinking about that hole under the oak tree. The one where Eli said, "The man who's buried here talked to him." 2 nights ago, I decided to see for myself. I waited until after midnight, took my flashlight and a shovel. The air was still and heavy. I could hear my heart pounding louder than the crickets. I started digging right where he'd been. The dirt came up soft, too soft, like someone had been there recently. About 2 feet down, the shovel hit something, not rock. Something soft and heavy. I dropped to my knees, brushed the dirt away with my hands. My fingers hit plastic tarp. I pulled at it, and the smell that came out made me gag. I kept going anyway, hands shaking so hard I could barely see what I was doing. When I pulled it open, I saw a hand, small, gray, wearing a little silver bracelet with a heart charm. I knew it instantly, Eli. I stumbled back, gasping for air. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. The light from my flashlight rolled across the ground and hit another shape beside him, another tarp, bigger. I forced myself to look. Inside was something else, bones, half burned, and hanging around what was left of the neck was a rusted metal dog tag, my husband's name engraved right there. I don't remember falling, but I must. When I woke up, the sun was rising. My shovel was gone. The dirt was smooth again. The yard looked untouched. I called the sheriff. He came, looked around, found nothing. No tarp, no bracelet, no bones. Just me standing there, covered in mud, shaking. He told me maybe I'd been dreaming again. Maybe I dug in the wrong place. Maybe I shouldn't be out here alone so much. But when he left, I noticed something by my back door, a muddy footprint, small, child-sized, and right beside it, on my kitchen table, was my husband's dog tag, clean, dry. Now the nights are quiet again. The neighbor's house is still empty. No more digging, no more crying, just that same still air. But sometimes, when the wind picks up, I swear I can hear it again, that soft scrape of metal against dirt, coming from under the oak tree. I don't go out there anymore. I can't. Not after realizing those holes Eli dug, they weren't digging into the ground. They were coming from underneath, from something trying to get out. I still talk to my husband some evenings. I sit on the porch with my tea and stare at that oak tree. I tell him I miss him, tell him I'm sorry, because now I can't tell what's buried out there anymore, who put it there. The other day, I found something strange in the garden, a toy truck, half buried under the roots. I swear I threw it away weeks ago. This time, there was something new scratched into it. 4 words etched deep into the metal, like someone wanted to make sure I read it. It said, "You shouldn't have dug." I dropped it and ran inside. I locked every door and window, but when I turned around, the back door was cracked open, just enough to see out into the yard. The oak tree was swaying, though there was no wind, and right under it, the ground looked soft again. I've thought about leaving this place, selling the house, but every time I pack a bag, something stops me. I feel like I can't go, like the ground itself won't let me. Maybe that's what peace really is out here, not quiet, just waiting. Because every night now, I hear the same sound, slow, careful, a shovel hitting dirt, and a voice small, calm, and close. It whispers my name like a secret. I know who it is, and I know what he wants. But I'm too old to run, too tired to scream. So I sit by the window and listen. I let him dig, and sometimes, when I close my eyes, I swear, I can feel the floor beneath me tremble, just enough to know the ground's moving again. The digging never really stopped. It just changed direction. Now, it's getting closer to the house. Maybe one of these nights, he'll reach me. And when he does, maybe then I'll finally understand why he was digging all along. But until then, I'll just keep listening. Because peace isn't the absence of sound. It's the moment before it starts again. If this story touched your heart, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from.